Good evening, YouTubers. Welcome back into a special edition of Astros Recap. It's my mid-season report. 81 games are in the book, so if you do the quick math, there's 162 games in a regular season of baseball, so the Astros have played exactly half of that. So I will spend the majority of this podcast talking about the Astros as a team and go player by player and sort of how I feel about, our 25 or 26 man roster, the way things shape up. I could talk about what just happened. Obviously, it is Wednesday, so not my usual day. Obviously, it's 11:20 p.m. Wednesday night, but Astros into the series. Whenever you may watch this, but fresh in my mind, so I'll just speak very briefly about this. I usually wait till my Sunday night podcast to actually go game by game here, but they just finished off getting swept by the Baltimore Orioles in their home ballpark, which was pretty shameful to say the least, which is crazy. I mean, the Astros just ended a 10-game stretch where, anything less than 7-3, because you got Baltimore for 6 games basically, and you had a 4-game set with Detroit right in between those 2 3-game sets with Baltimore. Going into these 10 games, you felt like this is a time to basically just take care of business, take out the trash. But at the end of it, the Astros go 5-5, which is, it's inexcusable to say the least. I mean, people talk baseball, this is just baseball, the ebbs and flows in a season. And I can get that to an extent, but there's still no excuse to allow Baltimore to come into your home ballpark and take all 3. This is eerily similar to earlier this year when the Astros got swept by Detroit, the Tigers that is, at home. But yeah, we talked last Sunday about, sweeping Baltimore and ending the week on not such a great note, losing 2 of 3 to Detroit. But so I think things over here. This week's not off to a good start. The Astros usually struggle. When they usually struggle this year, I think it starts and ends with the hitting or hitters. Obviously, when the Astros lose a lot of games, especially this year, you look at the bullpen because they have been a big culprit of the problem with the Astros this year. No doubt about that. But also, when I look at their losses, it's really the hitting. And the hitting, which was unstoppable, it was just incredible. They were just scorching hot for so long when they had that 11-game winning streak. And then it just sort of crashed and burned after the rain out, the postponement on Friday. No, it was on Thursday. No, it was on Friday. Yeah. That Friday postponement, that rain out sort of it screwed them over, I guess. But yeah, I mean, one of the things I like to point out very quickly in this series, Greinke pitches 5 innings game 1. So you need 12 outs from your bullpen. That's usually a recipe for disaster unless you're up 6, 7, 8 runs, which the Astros weren't. Jose Urquidy in Game 2 gets hurt in the 2nd inning, so you need your bullpen to basically cover 7 innings worth of outs. That's usually a recipe for disaster. And then today, Luis Garcia, who... Yeah, I'm not the type of guy that's going to blame umpires. In fact, I didn't even see like the very top half or most of it. But yeah, he got squeezed on a few calls. Threw 44 pitches in the first inning, gave up 4 runs. He got through 4, which seemed like a long shot the first inning there, but he did get through 4. But again, 15 outs from your bullpen, that's a recipe for disaster. So our starting pitchers and our hitters, usually, obviously not Urquidy's fault. He just got hurt, okay? Greinke ran up the pitch count after 5 innings. He was like at 96 pitches, so he had to be taken out. And then Garcia, sort of the same scenario after the very long first inning, which he threw like 44 pitches, I believe, to get through the first. So, and then the bullpen is just a disaster. Like, it is what it is. Like, we know what the bullpen is. It doesn't really matter who you bring in. They'll find a way to screw games up, especially if you're in close to contests. But yeah, it starts and ends with the hitting. The hitting's just gone completely. It's non-existent at this point. I mean, we'll see what happens. But again, I'm not going to go through these games specifically. Just sort of the recap of putting all three games into one sort of thing here. But yeah, we're going to talk about players. The team itself, they are now 48 and 23. 48 and 23. So if we do the math there, they're on pace to win 96 games. So 96 and 66. If we play to our pace this year, we will. That will definitely be good enough to make the playoffs. We'll see how good Oakland ends up being. Obviously, you'd think that'd be good enough to win the division, although I'm not 100% sure on that because Oakland is Oakland, and Oakland finds a way to. They just find a way. But that would definitely be good enough to win a wild card spot. I don't think it's going to be where you have to win 90 games. If you win 90 games, that should probably be good enough to make a wild card spot. But that's not the goal. The goal is to win the division. You do whatever you can these days to win your division because that wild card game can really go any way. With one 9-inning game to save your season, basically. Oakland can tell you a lot about that because 3 years where we won 100 plus, they played very good baseball in most divisions, probably would have won their division, but the Astros were too good, and Oakland lost a few of those wild card games and were out before really the postseason even really got going. But the Astros, I have to be satisfied overall with where they are record-wise. I probably didn't expect them to be this good. I said 88 to 92 wins, which I went into the season thinking the Astros would be sort of in that between 88 and 92 wins. So, again, if they stick to pace, they'll beat that. I really wanted to come in today talking about on pace for 100 wins because it looked like that was going to be the case, but the Orioles just swept us, so that's not the case. But anyway, the Astros actually lead the division, I think, by half a game now. So as I pull this up here, let's see here. So they have a half-game lead over Oakland in the AL West. They've played one less game than Oakland, have one less loss. Both sitting at 48 wins after today's game. The Astros will play again tomorrow. They'll play Cleveland. It's actually a good thing we're starting a new series and hitting the road, I feel like. But we'll play Cleveland for 4. A few things. So obviously Alex Bregman's the big injury hitting-wise. I will start with our starters, though. I want to start there. So obviously Zach Greinke, opening day starter, not very consistent this year. He'll come out and look great and pitch 7-8 innings, and he'll look great, and then he'll come out the next start and give up 4 runs, go 5 innings, and then Greinke's very up and down, I feel like, this year, so hasn't been very consistent. In fact, he pitches better on the road than he does at home this year. I think that's important to point out, but he was a guy I felt like going into the year was a guy we really need to lean on to be our ace. He isn't an ace anymore. It's just that simple. Zach Greinke, it might take some digging to find these numbers because I'm not going to have everything right in front of me, so I really have to look for his last start, which I'll do right here, and then I'll find his box score and click on him to actually pull up the stats of this year. So Zach Greinke, very up and down this year as I look at the numbers here. He's 8-2, which is a pretty good win-loss total. 3.65 ERA, which is decent. Not great, but not terrible. 103 innings, 74 strikeouts, whip 1.15. So for most teams, that's middle of the rotation type guys. So, and I think we just have to. That's who Greinke's going to be. So, but overall, I'm not super excited about Greinke, but again, I'm not going to. He hasn't had a terrible season. He's just been okay. He's been sort of decent, but yeah, he's in middle of the rotation type guy, I would say. So yeah, that's sort of my opinion on Greinke. I mean, obviously I'd hope he'd get a little bit better, but I mean, what do you expect? Fromber, let's see here. Let me see what I can do here. We might not go in complete order here. I'm trying to think, though, because we're going to go back to opening day here. So, obviously, Greinke got the opening day nod here. Christian Javier. So, Christian Javier was their second starter. He's out, obviously, in the bullpen now. But Christian Javier, so he had a good stretch during the middle of the year. He actually was pitching. He was one of our better starters, felt like. He had a scoreless streak going on. The Astros like him in the bullpen, obviously, with the surplus of starting pitchers they have. One person had to go, so he was the first one to sort of go to the bullpen. But Javier, I mean, overall, not terrible. He does struggle sometimes, especially of late. He's been struggling. He's been walking hitters. He's got good stuff. I mean, we won't forget what he did last year in the postseason. He was a big guy in that bullpen that we leaned on to get multiple innings out of, with the days off and things like that. Obviously, he was a starter for the majority of last year after Verlander was out for the year. And he sort of filled in, did a pretty good job in the rotation, and then moved to the bullpen by the time postseason came around. We'll be in the bullpen here for now. But I'm happy with Javier. I'd like to see him used more so with one-inning outings late in games. I talked about this briefly last week. I really need to find a line here to give you. He pitched today, so I might have actually it today. Let's see here. Yeah, so he went an inning and 2/3, walked 2, struck out 3. ERA is under 3, so you have to be happy with that overall. So Javier, obviously back and forth, starter now in the bullpen. So, but overall happy with him. Yeah, like I said, this is gonna take some digging to get through because it's not. Lance McCullers will be the next guy we talk about here. So Lance McCullers, we can basically tell you who he is. Hard to judge him based on last year because of the entire, the whole 60 game, not getting a full sample size. But after 81 games, I can tell you Lance McCullers is. He's a guy who can be very good or very bad. He's very inconsistent. He's kind of like Greinke in that way. He can go out, look spectacular. He's 5-1 in the year, so win-loss total is good. He's got an ERA under 3, so at 2.94, so that's pretty good. I mean, McCullers, you're always scared if he pitches on the road because you just don't know what to expect. In fact, his overall numbers on the road are pretty horrendous, so you'd probably rather have McCullers throw at home. He'll walk a lot of hitters. He can strike out guys, but he's not going to take you deep in the ball games. So you're lucky to get 5 or 6 innings. If you get that, you usually take it with McCullers. Spent some time on the injured list. That's no surprise. He does that every single year. It'll be interesting to see McCullers if he stays healthy throughout the rest of the year because he's never thrown more than 140 innings in any one of his years. So that will be interesting. He is a guy that has to go to the bullpen by the time playoff starts. If the Astros are in the playoffs, of course, which we expect them to be. But he's a guy that would be huge out of the bullpen, at least postseason-wise. So McCullers, the numbers are actually better than I thought. He's 5-1, 2.94, so I really can't complain too much there. So we'll do that there. Let's see here. So I have to go back to like the start of each season as I do this here because I'm trying to go in order with the way the season started and our starters, which is why it's. Let's see here. Fourth starter for us this year was Jose Urquidy. So Jose Urquidy Just went on the DL for the second, or IL, I should say. DL's offensive, apparently. IL for the second time this year. We'll see with his. We don't have a full update on his injury yet. So we're still waiting. I think it's just discomfort at this point, which is probably pretty good news. But Urquidy this year, he's been pretty solid. Urquidy had like 2-3 start stretch where he actually struggled, but he did bounce back. ERA at 3.38, he's 6-3, so WHIP is under 1. So Urquidy, both of our starters I've been satisfied with. So when we get to the bullpen, that's where I'm really actually gonna tear some people apart here. But Urquidy's been fine. I've had no issue with him whatsoever. Luis Garcia pitched today. He struggled today, which was surprising. We talked about his, pitch count really running up there in the first inning, but comes to biggest surprises, I'd probably say Garcia is that guy, just because you really had no idea this year. Didn't even know he make the rotation. Got pulled from the rotation. Now he's put back in, and he's pitched so well in the rotation, you really can't take him out. So that's where we're at with try to get you some numbers here. But yeah, I mean, even in a bad start, which last start in Detroit, he didn't look great, but he still got through 6-7 innings, only allowed 2 runs. His numbers are going to be solid. He took him a while to get his first win. In fact, he pitched pretty good in his first 5 or so starts. The bullpen blew a lot of his games, if I remember correctly. And then he went on a stretch where he won 5 straight starts. So he's 6-5 on the year. I think that's sort of, I would disregard the record, but 3.14 ERA, was under 3 before going into this game. 90 strikeouts in 80 innings, so he can strike people out. The WHIP is a little over 1 at 1.12. But overall, Garcia's been great, and he's too good. I mean, all of our starters this year really have been just fine, and they've done a great job. So our starting staff overall, after 81 games, I'm definitely satisfied with. I could go to the bullpen here. This is the part of the Astros I really hate, is the bullpen. And I'm not even going to use the at-bat app for this, because that would take forever to get through. I'm actually going to try to look this up online. So we'll type in Astros, if I can spell here correctly, bullpen 2021 stats here. Let's see if we can. They might just give me of all of our bullpen guys here, so we'll see here what I can get. This is the entire team. I want just the bullpen specifically. Let's see here. This might work. Yeah. Alright, no particular order here. This might take actually longer than I thought. No, I think this is the 25-man roster here. Yeah, this looks right. Or these are just all the relievers. So Brian Abreu guy, early in the year actually was okay with. This is his first chance for him to actually get a sort of he's getting a chance to actually start the season on the roster and actually show what he's made of. It's been back and forth between the minors, majors, previous years. Actually didn't get off to a terrible start. In fact, he was one of the guys I was actually more satisfied with. He wasn't great, obviously. I mean, he wasn't like striking out the side 1, 2, 3 innings, but at least he was getting through his innings without giving up runs. That quickly turned into something bad. He just fell off a cliff. Abreu not happy with. At the end of the day, I'm just not. 4.21 ERA. He's actually rehabbing an injury right now, but when he comes back, he's not going to make a difference. In fact, he probably hurts the team. So that's how I feel about Brian Abreu. Brandon Bielak's been terrible this year. 6.21 ERA for him, so he's been pretty bad. Not happy with him. Kent Emanuel, obviously out for the year. He pitched well, but Dusty, for some reason, never wanted to use him in tighter situations, which was crazy to think of because you have all these other pitchers that can't pitch in tight situations. He never gave Emanuel a chance, and now he's out for the year. So, but Kenny Emanuel is one of the few guys in that bullpen I actually sort of liked as a lefty. Ralph Garza Jr., this is his second stint with the team. He's just here to fill a roster spot right now with the injuries we got. Hasn't been terrible. The one sort of black mark on his sort of pitching line this year was the San Diego game where he gave up a 3-run home run to Will Myers, which ended up costing him the win. But I'm not going to sit here and grade Garza harshly because it's not like he's been terrible. The ERA is at 4.82, but again, he hasn't pitched a lot of games this year, so he's only got 9 1/3 innings. So there's that, yeah. I mean, so we'll do that. Tyler Ivey, I won't bring up. He had one start, lost it, but that's not anything to talk about. Inoue Paredes, he's probably the one pitcher on this team I can't stand the most. I cannot stand seeing Inoue Paredes. If he didn't pitch into the game with the Astros the entire year, I'd be completely fine with that because he's been absolutely just atrocious. He just can't throw strikes. ERA 6.23. Here's the interesting stat. 17 walks to 15 strikeouts. That is horrendously terrible. He can't throw strikes. He just can't. He can't consistently throw the ball inside the strike zone. So Inoue Paredes, you've failed. If I were to give you a report card grade, it'd be an F because you have failed as a major league pitcher this year. Ryan Presley's been great. The only bright spot in the bullpen, Ryan Presley, ERA at 1.69, 12 saves and 13 opportunities. He's got, let's see here, get the strikeouts. He's pitched in 32 innings, 39 strikeouts, only walked 5 hitters. He's allowed 9 runs this year, 6 of them earned, only 7 hits. No, wait. I'm looking at the wrong thing here. He's allowed 23 hits in 32 innings. And, yeah, 39 strikeouts to 5 walks. Yeah, 9 runs, 6 earned. He's been good. He's been good. I'd really like Presley in the setup role, but they don't have another closer, so you have to sort of stick with that. We'll see what they do at the deadline there. Brooks Raley, he's stuck. Brooks Raley had one sort of 6 outing appearance, or 6 consecutive outings where he didn't allow runs, but other than that, he's in that Inoue Paredes category of a guy. If he didn't pitch again this year, it really wouldn't bother me too much. ERA is actually under 6, 5.97, which is actually an accomplishment compared to a lot of our other relievers. But he's a guy that's, I'm just looking at the numbers real quick. He's allowed 23 runs, 19 earned. He's actually, stayed healthy. One of the guys in the bullpen that stayed healthy for the majority of the year. But other than that 6 sort of consecutive outing stretch, he's given up runs in basically every. He was, oh my God, terrible to start the year. Every single outing he came in, he just blew up, and Dusty continued to use him over and over and over and over again, which was crazy to think about. But that's what Dusty did. But not happy with him. Nivaldo Rodriguez only pitched in 4 games, so I can't really give him a grade. Andre Scrub was here, came after about a month or so in, came in to actually start. He was late, I guess, maybe injured. I don't know exactly the issue with Andre Scrub, but he looked pretty good out of the gates, and then he fell off a cliff and ran into a wall. His ERA is also barely under 6 at 5.94. He's actually back on the roster now. So in his outing, he got called back up, I guess, to take somebody's spot who got hurt. I don't know exactly. But yeah, Andre Scrub, he kind of like Paredes had issues throwing strikes. He was bad enough to where they sent him back down to AAA. But so look at his, win-loss total really isn't important when it comes to bullpen pitchers. Well, it can be, but not really. I mean, his strikeout to walk ratio is actually 38-9, so it's not terrible, but the ERA is still at about 6, so it's not very good. I mean, should be on. Well, no, I'm not looking at this right. Hold on. I was wrong. His there's no way his strikeout to walk ratio. It's 15-14, and it's something he struggled with last year. So, Andre Scrub, yeah, I mean, he's just a guy who's going to walk people. Doesn't have overpowering stuff. Can strike some hitters out, but at the end of the day, I've not been happy with him. Joe Smith, guy we thought would actually be pretty good. He hasn't been. Terrible. 6.23 ERA. He's also rehabbing from an injury. But Joe Smith has been absolutely terrible. Peter Solomon only played 2 games. Can't really, judge him. Ryan Stanek, a guy they brought over in the offseason. ERA 4.59. They actually blew up. It was actually in the mid to low 3s before yesterday's game. Gave up 5 earned runs yesterday. But he was a guy they were sort of using as a setup man. And for the first month and a half of the year, he was great in that spot. He did run into some trouble. Looked like he was sort of starting to turn a corner and get back to his early season self. But after last night's outing, that really blew up the ERA. But Stanek's not a guy that it's a tough situation with Stanek. Blake Taylor, he's in that Enoli Paredes category. Not in the sense that he walks a ton of hitters, but Blake Taylor and Enoli Paredes were 2 guys last year as rookies, which really showed us that they have the possibility of actually, helping this bullpen this year. And they're proving that the last year's sort of coronavirus 60-game season was a fluke, because Blake Taylor's also been terrible this year. He spent time in the IL. He's back with the team now. His ERA actually isn't terrible. It's at 3.38, so you got that there, but 18 strikeouts, 6 walks. But Blake Taylor hasn't been what he was last year. Not even close. Not even close. So that sort of ends my reliever report there for you, bullpen report. Unless you're Ryan Presley. Ryan Stanek, not too harsh on, obviously. He was doing okay. It's a guy you're sort of going to ride or die with, but aside from Stanek and Presley, you just have a whole bunch of pitchers. You can basically throw their names into a hat, pick one out, and cross your fingers, but don't expect much, because it's a total SHIT show in that bullpen for the most part. So that'll be the biggest thing the Astros need to sort of work on come trade deadline. They need to get a reliever, preferably 2, if they really want to get back to the World Series and win the World Series. They're going to need to get 2 quality relievers. Now, they do have Pedro Baez, who might come back. He could help. Austin Pruitt's another guy who could help if he gets up here healthy. Josh James isn't going to help this team, so don't expect anything from him. He's not going to help this team. If he's anything like it was last year, he's just another part of the SHIT show that is the bullpen right now, aside from Stanek and Presley. So I got that. But, depending on if and when they get, Baez back, if he looks good, you might be able to settle to get 1 reliever. But James Click's got some moves he's got to make, and he's going to be, this is going to be a good time for me to sort of judge James Click, which I really wasn't able to do last year. In fact, he's responsible for Brooks Raley. That really hasn't worked out. But, replacing A.J. Hinch isn't an easy task. And he hasn't done much yet. But this will be his first sort of trade deadline to sort of see what he can come up with here. So yeah, there's that. I'll go back to my at-bat app to talk about hitters. Obviously, I'm at 30 minutes here, so probably should have thought this podcast would go a little bit long. Jose Altuve, who's been our leadoff hitter for the majority of the year, been pretty good. Not usual, over 300 type self. But after the terrible season he had last year, and there are reasons for that. Apparently he had some deaths in the family. That can be, we know that can be rough on him. So he's been pretty good. He actually leads the team in home runs with 17, so he's on pace to hit 30-plus home runs. I'll take a 287 average for 43 RBIs. His average has been hovering right around 300. After the series, a lot of our batting averages went down, but overall I've been very happy with Altuve. He sort of bounced back after a very bad last year. Brantley, our two-hole hitter for the majority of the year here. Let me make sure I'm on the right game here. Yeah, I am. Brantley's been good, 340 average. He did spend some time on the IL recently. The power numbers aren't really there. He's only had 4 home runs, 30 RBIs. But I look at a 340 average, and I think you're doing pretty good, so I've been happy there. Our three-hole hitter for the majority of the year, obviously it's Alex Bregman. So Bregman got hurt. So when I go to his last game, which I do have pulled up here, or I should have it pulled up here, right there. So Bregman, a guy who was struggling mightily before actually getting hurt and going to be out for a while here. But Bregman has a 275 average, 7 home runs, so power's really not there. 34 RBIs. Give me a second here. Got sort of a runny nose there, so I apologize for that. But Bregman, not totally happy with. He hasn't been terrible, but he was really struggling before going on the IL there. But Bregman's a guy you'll have a longer leash with than other guys. He plays a good third base. 275 isn't terrible. Usually when I look at the averages, that's the first thing I'll look at. If you're hitting 300 or above, you're a good hitter. If you're hitting 280 or anywhere from basically 275 to 300, but you have the power numbers, I usually take that. So, but yeah, Bregman, that's what Bregman's doing. Yordan Alvarez, 298, so he's actually hitting for a pretty good average this year. I wish he'd have more home runs, only 13. At this point, I expect him to have at least 20, basically, with his power numbers. 50 RBIs. He's on pace to hit. He's on pace to hit, 30 home runs, but he is on pace to drive in more than 100 guys. So that aspect, I'm happy. I just wish that in the second half we could see a little bit more power consistently from Yordan Alvarez. But Yuli Gurriel, been pretty good this year, 328, so that's a big indicator. 10 home runs, 52 RBIs. He's sort of in that Yordan Alvarez category there. They've been very similar with their numbers this year. But Gurriel's been good. Correa got off to a terrible start. I was ripping him to shreds early on. Did get the average all the way up over 300 as he was scorching hot for a while there. Dropped back to 296. 15 home runs, 49 RBIs. If he can consistently stay there, that's a good season for Correa. If you could hit right there, drive in 100 and hit about 30 home runs. But Correa did turn his season around pretty good there. When you start getting to this area of the batting lineup, Kyle Tucker. So I'm actually not even at the right. What am I even doing here? I'm way off on this game. I was at Bregman's last game, so these numbers that I've just mentioned might not be totally up to date here. Let's see if I can redo this. See if I got the same numbers here. Altuve at 287. I think I said that initially. This might take a second, so I apologize. Now, everything was up to date. All the numbers I gave you were right on track there. Kyle Tucker, 268, 13 home runs, 47 RBIs. So Tucker, a guy who started the season, hit a few home runs, average wasn't there, really hit a brick wall, was terrible for a while. He was god-awful for a while. But Kyle Tucker, this was his season to really show that he's a very viable, good Major League Baseball player. Was sort of the bright spot from a hitting standpoint on our team last year, but again, sort of incomplete with the 60-game year. Look at Tucker now. Tucker, 268, the average isn't great. 13 home runs, not great. 47 RBIs. No, I'm wrong. No, wait. Tucker spent some time on the IL recently. But he could pick it up. I'm not pleased with Kyle Tucker overall this year. I'm just not. Yeah, it's that simple. I'm just not. Miles Straw didn't get off to a great start, but he's really raised his average all the way up to 268. In fact, it was at 270 at one point. So Straw's been on a good run here lately. Only 2 home runs. He's not going to hit a lot of home runs. That's who he is. 27 RBIs. I wish Dusty would bet him 9th instead of 8th because I'd like to have that speedy runner to end, in the 9th spot. So that's the one thing. That's a Dusty issue, though. I think if I were managing the team, I'd have Martin Maldonado or Jason Castro hitting 8th and then Miles Straw hitting 9th. I don't like the whole Miles Straw. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So, yeah, that's where I'm at there. But Miles Straw has raised the batting average, and that's what I'll look at for Straw. He's played a pretty good center field. Not a George Springer, Jake Marisnick type center field, but overall he hasn't been terrible out there. So, and I think a lot of Astros fans, Astros Twitter especially, don't like him. But you can't compare him to Springer. You're not going to get Springer. You can't replace that guy. You just can't do it. So, and even Straw, I was listening to the broadcast today. They said a big reason, I think Julia talked to, Miles Straw, or Julian Morales, spoke to him, and he just said he had to be himself. He had to stop, thinking that he had to be some replacement for George Springer and just relax and, fall into his place. But the average is 5. If he hits 268 for the rest of the year, that's good. I'm going to take it. So Maldonado's been the one guy that's actually been a disappointment from a hitting standpoint. Castro got the start today, so I'll go back tomorrow to see him. But he's hitting 181 this year. Now, obviously, he's not going to hit for an average. I don't expect him to. But usually he'd pop a few home runs here and there, more so. He's got 5 this year, 21 RBIs. Obviously, Martin Maldonado is here for his catching ability and his ability to throw out base runners. But we need a little bit more from the plate in the second half from Maldonado. It's too ugly at 181, 5 homers, 21 RBIs. That's not good enough. I mean, if you're hitting 230, okay, I'll take that. Some more home runs. But that was one thing. Maldonado's never going to be a good hitter. Robinson Chirinos, for his 2 years, he was never a great hitter either. Hard to find good hitting catchers, but he's got to do better than 181. Okay, he's got to hit at least 200 and hit 20 home runs for him, or 15 to 20. I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in Maldonado, and they did sign him for another year, so we'll wait and see how that turns out. Abraham Toro, who's brought up for Alex Bregman, he's not a Major League Baseball player. It's that simple. Now, the average of 245, 2 home runs, 13 RBIs. He's only had 49 at-bats, so there's a reason that. If you give him 300 at-bats, he's probably will be lucky to be hitting 200. Doesn't really have power. He's just not a very good baseball player in general. He's just here because Bregman is on the IL. So I'm not a big Toro supporter. He'll play decent defense, I guess. Not Alex Bregman level defense, but he's just here to fill the roster spot for now. So there's that. Chas McCormick, another guy who's had some starts. He has shown some pop, but overall his average is terrible. Let's see if I can pull up his. I don't even know when he played last. I haven't seen him in the lineup recently, so see if I can find him here. He plays a decent outfield, hitting .228 this year. But yeah, he's got 9 home runs, so he's got some pop. He does strike out a lot as well, though, and he has a huge uppercut in his swing. So McCormick, I mean, I think overall you have to be pretty satisfied. He's not an everyday guy. Straw's more so. They might split some time in center field there, but yeah, McCormick, you're most impressed with sort of the pop he's shown as a hitter with the bat. But .228 average, not great. 27 RBIs, of course, smaller sample size than most of the guys on the team. But McCormick's just, yeah, I mean, he's a fourth outfielder basically. So, and then Castro has also spent some time on the IL. 234, 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, only 64 at bats. So there's a reason those are like that. I think I like him more as a hitter than Martin Maldonado. Really, anything is an upgrade from a hitting standpoint with Martin Maldonado. But Castro, he's got, I thought he had more than 2 home runs, but only 64 at bats. So, but Castro, again, he's your backup catcher. So there's that. Trying to think, Robel Garcia, we'll pick him up here. He's also filling in for Bregman. He's another. He's been here most of the year, actually. Lemis Diaz is usually your utility guy, but it has been Robel Garcia. He hasn't done a whole lot at the plate, actually, to be completely honest with you here. See if I can pick this up here. He's been 197, 1 home runs, 8 RBIs. So yeah, he's really a non-factor at the plate. He's like an Abraham Toro basically. Then they'll platoon that third base spot until we get some. Until Bregman comes back at least. I mean, but Bregman's another probably month away, I would say, from coming back. So it'll be well after the All-Star break, probably at the end of July. I would expect him to come back. So there's that, obviously. So starting pitching, perfectly fine. I'd say, overall very happy there. Relievers, extremely disappointed, shameful when I talk about our Astros relievers, aside from Ryan Presley, that is. And the hitters overall have been good. I mean, they're ice cold right now, but before that they were scorching hot. There's never any in-between, I feel like, with this team. Talk about the ebbs and flows in a baseball season. It's a marathon, 162 games, so usually the Astros are playing poorly like they are now. I try to just ride it out knowing that they'll come around at some point, which I expect them to, obviously. The one bad stretch they had this year was when they got swept by the Tigers and the Rockies, lost 2 or 3 in Seattle. Lost 9 of 10 in that stretch right there. If you do 4 plus 2, that was 8. They lost 1. They lost 9 of 10. That was their one bad stretch. Then they started winning series, had their winning streak, and now they're sort of falling back into a lull. So we'll see. 44 minutes here, so that's my sort of mid-season report. The Astros have played exactly 81 games, so 81 more, and then hopefully we'll be looking forward to a successful postseason. Love to hear your comments in the section below. Might have left out a few players here and there. There are a few guys in the bullpen which were unfair to grade because, like Ralph Garza, Nivaldo Rodriguez, Peter Solomon, those types of guys I really can't grade because they just haven't had enough games yet. But Ralph Garza I'm actually okay with. Other than that 3-run home run to Will Myers, he's been pretty good. So, I mean, the other bullpen pitchers don't really set a standard of being good. So if you're decent, halfway decent, you're going to get a passing grade. If I grade on a curve compared to what the bullpen does. But that's been sort of, you usually get on this podcast, if I'm upset one week, usually it's because of the bullpen. They did something terrible. So there's that. Yeah, so I mean, the big issue for the Astros is finding a way to fix this bullpen. Obviously, when you get to the playoffs, you'll shorten your rotation to 3 or 4 guys. You'll be able to send guys to your bullpen that are starters, which will be very beneficial. Like Lance McCullers, Javier will be there, maybe, or Keedy. It'll be interesting to see what they do, but that will definitely help out to have those starters as relievers when postseason comes around. But I still think you need to add a 7th or 8th inning guy that you can count on. Hopefully we can get Baez back, because I think he might be able to be that for us. But that won't be enough. They need to add somebody. But we'll have another month. July 31st or 30th, I think, is the deadline. I believe it's the 30th. So they'll have a month here to figure out, which teams are buyers, which are sellers. Obviously, looking at the sellers, the Astros will obviously be a buyer, but they don't have a lot to offer in terms of prospects, because their minor league system, their farm teams are pretty depleted at this point with the moves they've made over the last 17, 18, 19. The moves they made, they basically traded away all their good talent in the minor leagues. But we'll wait and see. James Click works some magic, but you got to bring a guy in here that you can count on. So anyway, I'll wrap things up there. Let me hear your comments. Any players I missed, anything you disagree with, always open to the conversation in the comments section below. So I'll be looking at those. But I'd also like to hear your thoughts. Watch this video, like it, subscribe to my channel. Do all that good stuff you can on YouTube there. And I will be talking to you again, regular time, regular place, Sunday night. And we'll hopefully be talking about some better games here against the Indians. But we'll wrap things up there, and we'll see you then.